Hello friends, Brian Shercliffe with Vitality Cincinnati, and welcome to the floor that I'm resting on in my house and resting on the carpet. And that's a choice that I've made for myself more recently that feel like one, a larger space is quite nice for yoga, and two, the yoga that I've begun practicing, at least the yoga of movement anyway, has become more gentle, closer to the floor, not needing a sticky mat, at least not very often. And so that's what I invite to here. And through a lot of the somatic explorations that I've encountered through movement intelligence, Ruthie Alon's work, and Feldenkrais method, everything's simpler, slower, more discovery-oriented, less so much interested in just following what the teacher says as beginning to listen to the inner teacher, what one of my teachers, Larry Schultz, yoga teacher for the Grateful Dead, and his famous student, Amber Espelage from Cincinnati, and they were fond of often talking about that inner teacher, that the inner teacher is wiser, beginning to listen in on what's happening for you in the midst of your exploration, instead of listening to what the teacher invites or suggests, though maybe there's an idea there to play with. So, because I have an idea that I'd like to offer here today and see what happens for you. So this is the kind of thing that I feel would be, I feel a lot of yoga classes that I've been to over the years maybe misses this invitation. Would be nice to begin to have, I don't know, more explorations that are more open-ended, questions, curiosities, time to explore. So I invite you to begin to, if it's comfortable for you, find your way to some flat, solid surface, and the floor might be it for you, or maybe not. Maybe your bed is the best place, but some place where you have some room and you can safely rest on your back if that's comfortable. If it's not comfortable, then maybe you skip this video and find something that is more interesting on our website, or of course, do what you would like. Most important thing is you do what's right for you. You listen to your inner teacher and discover for yourself. So I'm going to rest on my carpet here, and you do what you'd like, but I invite you to begin to find your way onto your back, and not so important that you follow my instructions as it is that you begin to find some comfort, some ease for yourself. And maybe that means that you rest on your back. Maybe it means that your legs are long, or maybe it means that your legs are bent, so you can decide where and how you feel most comfortable. In a lot of explorations, I often invite students to have bolsters and pillows and blankets, and maybe those things are nice for a lot of explorations. Might not be so helpful for what I'm going to invite us to explore here in a moment. So take a moment just to notice how you meet the floor right now, without any judgment, more of a curiosity. Start to notice one heel, one place on your foot, or how some place on your foot touches the floor. And follow that foot that you first chose. Begin to move up through your calf, and what touches the floor, what doesn't. Behind the knee of that leg, what touches the floor, what doesn't. Your thigh, your hip, what touches the floor, what doesn't. And then follow that same exploration through your other leg. From your heel to your hip, where do you experience contact of your leg with the floor, and where are you missing contact? Where does air pass through? And just curiously, which hip, if your hips were in some softer surface, say like, I don't know, some spring mud this time of year that I'm recording this video, or maybe at the firmer packed sand at the beach, and you were resting on your back, which hip would make a deeper impression in the sand? Right hip or your left hip? And how about for your shoulders? Which shoulder which shoulder blade would make a deeper impression in the sand or that softer surface? And then just begin just doing what's easy. Begin to, if you haven't already, lengthen one of your legs and just slowly, playfully begin to slide that foot of that leg along the ground. So you bend your knee and then you slide that foot back, and you do that just in ways that are easy. So your leg bends to slide your heel closer to your hip of that same side, and then you begin to lengthen that leg, and you try all kinds of different ways. Maybe it's more interesting to bend your knee so that your knee moves toward the ceiling. And then you slide your foot back and just playfully explore all these different ways that you can begin to bend your knee and slide your heel closer to your hip. Until eventually, at one point, your leg is in standing, your knee is bent, your foot's on the ground. I'll move my hand just so you can see. And then maybe you begin to slide that foot back out. All these explorations that you probably made when you were a child, a very young child, a baby perhaps. So you find all the different ways that you can bend your knee and slide your foot and experience the feeling of your foot sliding, and then that stability of when your foot is on the ground and your knee is bent. And then the instability of starting to let your foot slide out. Not quite as stable, you might say. And so you just play. And then as you feel ready, just begin to pause, let your leg rest any way that's easy for you. Maybe again your knee stays bent and your foot rests on the ground. Maybe your leg stays long on the ground. You choose. There's no right or wrong, unless of course you say that the right way is the way that's best for you. And then maybe you begin to explore with that other foot. You begin to slide that foot and bend that knee of the other leg, your second leg, and you play with all these different ways that you can do that. What does this leg, this foot, like to do? Maybe it's not quite the same thing you did with the other leg. So what? So you just do what's easy. You sense what feels best. Explore all the fun ways that you might begin to slide this foot into standing, some stability. once you feel like you've explored enough, let it go, take a pause. And just notice, is there more sensation? Do you experience more sensation through yourself just by listening to yourself move? Sensing yourself moving with ease in these easy ways. And of course, it wasn't just an activity of your foot and your legs. So as you slide one foot into standing, begin to notice other places within yourself and how they move. How when moving that foot, bending that knee, that something happens with your hips. Something happens with your shoulders. The weight shifts in some way. Even your shoulders move as your foot moves. How could that be? Experience even some movement of your head as your foot moves. Is it possible that even if your hand is on the ground, one of your hands, that as your foot moves, that the weight of your hand moves, the places of contact on your hand, that they change as your foot moves, that if you move one limb, it moves all of yourself, not just that limb. Explore with the other foot for a little while. Just see if that's true for this foot, for this side as well. That when you move this limb, that everything else moves as well. Is that true? Does it only happen when you move slowly, or does it happen when you speed it up just slightly? Maybe it's just easier to notice as you move more slowly. You can catch more information. And then when you're ready, just take a pause and notice what you feel, what you sense within yourself. And notice, has there been a change in the way your legs are in contact with the floor? Choose one leg, notice where you feel contact, where you don't feel contact. Similar to before or different. And some awareness to the other leg. Similar to before or different. No right or wrong answer here. And which hip rests more deeply into the softer surface of the ground? Same as before or different? Or are they just a little bit more similar to each other? Your right side of your hip from the left side of your hip. Which shoulder blade rests more deeply into the ground? Is it similar to before or different, or more, or are you just a little bit more tuned in to the just slightest of slight differences between your shoulder blades? And what's your breathing like? Is there something just smoother and easier about your quality of breathing, even though we really didn't even talk about breathing in this exploration? Has that even been improved just by sensing yourself, noticing yourself? Of course, you could stay here as long as you wish in this most important shape of yoga, Shavasana, complete resting shape, corpse shape. And yet so alive. So once you feel ready, maybe you slide a foot into standing and slide the other foot into standing and roll to the easy side and choose to stay here. Maybe you build a little pillow with your bent arm and rest your head on that bent arm and with your knees bent and stay here as long as you feel interested and comfortable. And this is the kind of style of yoga that we've begun to practice at Vitality. We have many styles, but these somatic explorations maybe get at the heart of what yoga was more than 100 years ago. Because the yoga of the past 100 years perhaps is very different than the yoga of previous centuries. And certainly back to the roots with Patanjali, there's very little explanation of what yoga movement, yoga asana, the yoga shapes should be, other than that we might be like a snake on the water, the beautiful movement of a snake on the water, that kind of fluid flexibility. Or Patanjali, probably one of the most important yoga speakers that we listen to today from many centuries ago, that maybe he was onto something by not describing shapes other than that fluid nature, that kind of childlike exploration. So I hope this little video has been helpful for you. And of course, if it's not, then you do your own thing. And that's the beauty of yoga, of listening to oneself and then watching how things change. Peace, 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 friends.